Welcome to episode 3 of the Hangin with Gannon podcast. I'm Pat Gannon, your host and your lender for life with 26 years of helping families secure their dream homes through intelligent financing. And now we're legit. We're on all platforms, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on my YouTube channel. It really helps us, of course, if you like and subscribe, and you'll be able to listen to all of our amazing guests anytime you want. Today, we're going to be talking with David Orso, who was born and raised in Annapolis and has sold over 2,000 homes in Anne Arundel County, often referred to as the most educated realtor in the industry. David attended the University of Dayton on a golf scholarship and got his degree in psychology, then went to Loyola College for an MBA with a concentration in strategic marketing, and then attended the world-famous program on negotiation at Harvard University Law School. David authored his book, Step Inside, The Unfiltered Truth About Listing and Selling Your Home in 2014, and he's recently finished his second book entitled Negotiation is the Difference. And by the end of this conversation, you'll understand why that title isn't just catchy, it's literally the key to saving thousands on your next home. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thank you for having me, Pat. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. We always like to start, always kind of talk about, it's so interesting to find out origin stories of right. People. Like in real estate, I think is no different, probably more than anything, is people come from different kinds of backgrounds. Talk to me about your origin story. How'd you get here?
Yeah, so I was living in Baltimore City. I was working for the Coca-Cola company at the time, and it was a classic management training program. I'd moved through the state of New York, moved back to Baltimore, and I was taking a girl out on a date, and I had just purchased my first home in Canton. So I kind of understood how much a payment would be, where values were. So I go to pick her up, and she's attending the dental school at that time, which is right next to Camden Yards. There's 6 graduate programs with the University of Maryland. And I walk in, and there's like 4 or 5 other girls sitting on the couch. And I was like, hey, what's the deal here? She said, well, we all rent a room in this property. And I thought, wow, it's a neighborhood called Ridgely's Delight. I thought, wait a second, these must be half the cost of what I just paid in Canton. And I became obsessed with becoming a landlord. And so I immediately started knocking on doors, trying to find properties. And I bought about 30 or 40 different rental properties. But my market was renting to the graduate students from the University of Maryland. In that journey, I had a really hard time finding a competent real estate agent. And my standard was a corporate America sort of sales professional, responsive, professional, knowledgeable, competent. And I just couldn't find an agent that met my standards. So I thought maybe there's a market here and jumped right in.
Professionally trained, right? And that wasn't anything that you were seeing out there at the time.
The realtor community completely lacked the professionalism that I was accustomed to in corporate America.
Sure. David, as we've gotten to get to know each other a little bit, you told me some of the personal challenges you faced over your life. Why don't you kind of tell the listeners a little bit about some of those things and how that's affected you personally, but also how it impacted your business?
Okay. Great question. Highly personal question.
Yeah. That's where we get there. We get real personal here.
Well, in 2008, I went broke. I went flat broke. I had overinvested in real estate, and I got stuck in a downturning market.
That was a downturning market in 2008.
So at that moment, I needed to really sharpen my negotiation skills. And it was a life lesson in how to negotiate complex negotiations with debt positions that had no chance. They were totally underwater. So I'm actually very grateful for that experience. Yeah. I mean, I took it to zero, but I needed to get out of that situation. And then you fast forward to 2014, and my wife was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. And that's really when my career was totally taking off. And it was a tough time to manage it all and be the husband I wanted to be the father that I wanted to be, and be the professional that I wanted to be. And in that moment, I realized I can't do it all myself. Life happens sometimes. Yeah. And I needed to start more purposefully building a team to support me. I had no idea that if you fast forward 5-6 years, I was going to be diagnosed with cancer, which happened in the middle of 2020. And it was a very serious diagnosis. And I was out for 6 months with chemo and radiation. And I had to rely on my team to keep the business moving forward. And they did an amazing job. I'm so grateful for them.
You learned that. You can count. That's where you really learn you can count on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't do it all yourself. And so I've just celebrated my 5-year cancer-free mark, which is a really big
congratulations.
deal. Thank you. In that journey, there's a clarity. There's just a clarity on the other side of cancer when you're a survivor, when you really figure out, what's important and what's the prioritization. But there's also this like BS meter that exists within
you. Don't have time for it.
You don't have time for it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you press the button on the remote and it goes from a regular channel to an HD channel and life gets super clear. And I feel like professionally, I just am allergic to the BS that a lot of agents spew. And I got to call it out. It's almost like my calling. I got to call that out.
Yeah.
And so I write books and manifestos to an industry that I love.
Yeah, that's your therapy.
Yeah.
Right?
So to speak, yeah.
So, and it sounds like you're 5 years. How's your wife doing?
My wife is great. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
She got on the other side of it as well. It was a unique situation for a couple in their 40s to both have cancer and go from caretaker to patient and patient to caretaker. So we are so blessed. We are so grateful. We're better for it. We have so much clarity around our lives having been on the other side of it. And it is very much in our rearview mirror.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you.
Well, what's the biggest misconception people have about real estate agents?
I think the biggest misconception is that they're created equally. And the compensation structure aligns to that. When you think about realtors, they generally are all about the exact same fee, right? But you're getting an extraordinarily different experience and different outcomes from different agents. So that underlying assumption that, I'll use my brother's friend as opposed to doing research and interviewing multiple agents is really a big challenge in our industry. And I can't stress it enough. You should interview multiple agents and find the best in the business.
Yeah, I think and oftentimes you find that, like you said, that my brother's friend, or I got an aunt that that does this, 2 deals a year, and they're just not getting the proper information. All right, let's get kind of a little bit hyper local, and let maybe talk about Anne Arundel County in specific. In 2025, what are you seeing right now? Maybe we'll take inventory levels. Is this a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? What kind of market are we in?
Great question. It really is neither. It's a normal market, and the market has found equilibrium. And if you study the market, the 25-year history of home sales is about 7,500 homes sold per year. And to really understand this, you need to understand a historical perspective. And just to compare, we're within 20 homes of where we were last year at the same time, okay? And the year before, we sold 7,400 homes. So we're right in a normal market. But to your industry, Pat, lending has been a big part of the story for 20 years. And when you go back and you start looking at 2005, when we had an environment where you could get a loan with,
if you were alive.
If you were alive, right. Yeah. All you need to do is fog a mirror. And then there's a consequence for that. In 2006 to 2010, we see foreclosures and short sales. And then around 2011, 2012, rates start coming down and we're seeing refinances. We're seeing the purchase environment go up. And then 18, 19, it slows for a minute, but then in 19, rates go below 4%. And man, it starts to accelerate. And then obviously we have the COVID years. The fallout of the COVID years, we had about 13,000 homes sold in 2022, and then 2023, half the number. And now we're seeing it come back a little bit to a normal level. So we're not really in a buyer's market or a seller's market. There isn't advantage on either side currently.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the COVID, and maybe even a little bit before COVID, but really when COVID was going on, I really felt bad for my buyers. I mean, if you were a seller, not a bad thing, but the buyers had to face extreme competition, had to make decisions so quickly, and had to give up everything. And I hated seeing and making multiple offers, going way over list. And now I think it's a really, really good time for buyers to be out there and find what they want and maybe pay the price that they want. But yeah, I mean, we talked about mortgage rates. I mean, they are higher. We the last 25 years prior to the rates going up a few years ago, we've been a really historically low rate environment. Yeah. I mean, it's funny to think that rates in the sixes at that time they were 20. That was a 24-year high when we got up into the sevens and such. But historically speaking, it's actually a normal rate environment. We just got really used to this sub 4%, and then we eventually got to the sub 3% rates.
Yeah, and when that happened, you had a stock market that was going crazy, home values were going through the roof, and money was really cheap. So you get a loan for 3%. And that was the perfect storm. It was like a trifecta for home buying. And that's when we saw in Anne Arundel County really this presentation of high-end properties flying off the shelf, waterfront properties flying off the shelf, because we are a move-up buyer marketplace.
Right. And now, part of the thing I think we're getting stuck on that, we talk about all the time is that move-up buyer it's been a little bit of a challenge in the market where it's just kind of stopping because a lot of those move-up buyers have sub 3% mortgage rates. And now, like, the chain of that feels like it's kind of disconnected a little bit. Yeah. I do feel like if we did see rates come down, that's where I think mortgage rates of all things would help our market if they came down a bit.
Yes.
To get some of those clogged up potential sellers that just aren't selling because they have this up to 3% rate.
Well, it was the unintended consequence of 3% rates. Yeah. Nobody thought through that. Oh my gosh, if somebody gets 3%, they're not going to give away something that's so worth having. Right. So they're sitting on their rate. They're not selling their properties. They're hanging on to it, which has created an inventory crisis. So unless life happens, we're not seeing people move.
Right. Okay. This is I think an interesting thing to kind of run through here. If you had $500,000 to invest in an Anne Arundel County property today, what would you do? Are we talking primary residence, investment properties, maybe best neighborhood, return of investment neighborhoods? What do you got for me here?
I think you'd expect me to say that I'd buy a big house, but the truth of the matter is, I think this is a great question, and it illuminates something that I try to tell people. Your primary residence is not an asset; it's a liability. And it has all the markings of a liability. It's a mortgage. You owe payments. Whenever I work with somebody and they buy a big house, I say, don't forget, big house, big bills. So your bills start going through the roof. A asset should be income producing, right? So I would personally go out and buy $2.5 million worth of residential real estate with a 20% down payment of $500,000. That produces income. I would take that income, I'd improve the properties, I'd raise the rents, and then I would go refinance the properties and keep milking that cow. So I think the question illuminates the distinction between a primary residence and an investment or an asset.
And we're going to get to this, I think, in a little bit when we delve into your book a little bit more. But one of the things I took away from it was one of the things you talked about is keeping buyers away from his emotion. And I think it's a lot easier to take the emotion out when you're talking about an investment, right? This is a business decision where, it's hard not to be emotional about the home you're going to live in, right? And that, but it should be a lot easier to separate. I'm buying this for business purposes, for investment, long-term investment, and I think we'll dive into that a little bit.
But I'd recommend that for a home buyer, just like I'd recommend it for an investment buyer. You have to have parameters, stick to your parameters, get what you want. On the investment side, it has to be minimally 10% cash-on-cash return. On the home buying side, maybe it's the neighborhood, maybe it's the school that you want, whatever it is. Stick to your top 3 or 4.
Okay. All right, let's maybe delve in here. We talked about the book a little bit. I'm going to show or here again, negotiation is the difference. The new book that you just came out with here. Let's talk about why did you write this book? What was your thought process in coming with the second book? And just kind of fill us in a little bit on it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love reading and writing, so it is a hobby of mine. I'm a voracious reader, and I find writing to be therapeutic. I'm also incredibly passionate about this industry, and I get very frustrated with superficial nonsense that goes around in our business and agents dancing on videos to promote properties and stuff like that.
That doesn't sell houses, dancing doesn't? No. Okay.
It doesn't, and that's the reason why I named negotiation is the difference. The biggest difference when you hire somebody is the quality of their representation. And it's a representation agreement. It's called a listing agreement. It's a representation agreement. It's not a marketing agreement. It's not a listing agreement. Everybody can put on the MLS. Everybody gets professional photography done. Everybody gets drone photos done. So when you break it down from that perspective, the efficiency of the marketing is pretty flat right now. but the agent makes the difference. And what makes the difference with the agent is their ability to negotiate. And negotiation is a skill. It's something that you have to be trained on and work through. So I hope with this book, I'm sharing 25 years of knowledge, over 2,000 contracts negotiated. I hope that it helps my customers and my friends get better deals and feel like they've negotiated a fair deal with whatever they're negotiating.
I think a lot of times this could be hugely helpful for not just clients, but other real estate agents. As I was reading it, I took a lot from it. Just, you talked about in the book, there's a lot of different negotiations in life.
Right.
You can take it. I think one part talked about negotiating bedtimes with your kids and things like that. There's so many things where slowing down and looking at it from the approach that you have, it's definitely a great read. Also, we talked maybe a little bit before we got on the podcast a little bit about this, but I thought a lot about when I was reading this is that, when they changed the commission rules last year, there was a lot of anxiety on the agent side about, oh no, now they've got to pay my commission or potentially pay my commission.
Right.
And it's really, I think what I was taking away as I was reading it is, you are really justifying, or more than justifying, and explaining the value in what you're able to do. And I think a lot of times agents have trouble explaining why a client should be paying the commission they're paying for them, because they don't really have a plan.
They don't have a value proposition. And the truth is, most agents are grossly unqualified to handle a major financial transaction. Yeah. And I know I'm slaughtering a sacred cow here in my industry. But the truth of the matter is, I tell everybody that my fee should be justified in the negotiation. So if it's a $25,000 fee, you should find that in the negotiation. I don't have trouble having clients sign a buyer broker agreement. I'm probably one of the few agents that really appreciates the decoupling of fees, which is what the Department of Justice recommended.
David, give us your number one negotiation tactic that buyers can use tomorrow.
Okay. Buyers typically will make an offer, and they may or may not know this, but their buyer's agent will simply email their offer over. And that's really poor. That's really poorly presented. So I would recommend better packaging and demand better presentation from your agent. So let's say it's $1 million listing and they're going to offer 900. Typically, it comes to me as a listing agent, just an email, here you go. And the agent will say, see what you can do. And I'm like, see what I can do? Let's see what you can do. How about you attach a cover letter explaining the buyer's perspective and why they're making this offer, explain comparable homes maybe they looked at in consideration of their offer, and make a phone call to say, I'm about to send you an offer, here's how we're looking at it, but support it with that cover letter to present to the seller. Most sellers are reasonable people. They just want to give it a shot, possibly at a higher number. But if they review a letter that is loaded with facts, data, and logic, they may say, I get it. I think that's what I would have offered. And it softens the blow.
Yeah, I think, I see it from the lending perspective. When my clients make offers, for the most part, I'll call the listing agent, tell them about how well qualified they are. And I can tell when I talk to the listing agent and they don't have any idea about the offer itself. And that's probably because they just got the email. Here's the and force them to figure out what the deal is.
Right.
Spell it out. Right.
Why wouldn't you spell it out? That's why we're hired as brokers.
What do you think is the biggest negotiation mistake you see buyers make?
Two things. I think they fall in love too quickly. You can't go falling in love with a property or a deal.
That's like we talked about.
When I was an investor, there was an old timer. There was a mentor of mine, and I was telling him how much I love this property, and he had a great line. He said, "Hey, just remember, the deal of the century comes along about once a week." And what he was saying was, don't go falling in love. There will be another one next week. Okay, that's the first error that I see, is when somebody just falls deeply in love with a property, as if there's never going to be another one like it. The second error that I commonly see is trying to get the last word and not allowing the other party to have the last word. And it may mean hedging a little bit in the negotiation, but getting too dug in about a certain point and just dropping things like, this is our best and final, or just really trying hard to get that last word. The last word negotiator typically doesn't win.
That sounds like negotiating with my kids when they were growing up. Was that
kids are great negotiators,
and they wanted the last word. They always wanted the last word, and Dad wants the last word. Yeah, but you get in that thing where
you can always give the last word to somebody else if you manage the conversation appropriately.
Right.
Allow them to get the last word.
That's great advice. What should home sellers know that agents don't always tell them?
I think that home sellers, when you talk about selling your home, the bottom line or the net, it's true money to them. So let's say it's a $25,000, you're negotiating the last $25,000 of the deal. Well, that $25,000 would go in the seller's pocket, right? On the other side of the table, for the buyer, it's $25,000 financed, which is probably the equivalent of a gym membership. So I think that sellers need to maintain that position, hold the line, but maybe suggest something creative like, we'll pay a point to reduce your mortgage to keep your payment the same. There's an old saying in negotiation, we don't negotiate positions, we negotiate options. And when you get to the finish line of a negotiation, usually it becomes very positional, which can be really toxic, and that's where deals can fall apart. So you need to create 2 or 3 options for each party to consider. That's what professionals do. That's what true negotiation looks like.
Yeah, I don't think I see that the buyers, at least I'm dealing with buyers, of course, really understand that an extra $1,000 is probably $6, $6 to $7 bucks, depending on the program and the rate. And they get so stuck and dug in on certain things that, maybe aren't that as important. Take that, but then get your other thing in another place, I think is a...
Generally, buyers don't understand the relationship with their lender. They'll say things like, well, I'm not paying $950 for that house. No, you're not. You're not paying $950 at all.
Right.
You're entering into a relationship with a lender, the financing, to get a mortgage for the next 30 years. But they'll probably only be there for 8 to 10 is the national average. So when you talk about a $6 a month increase, that's probably only over the course of 84 months, something like that. So they don't think through the math, and they make broad statements about what they're paying. They're not paying. It's a down payment and then a monthly payment.
So what about, we'll kind of bring it to some of the things that I do. How do you use lending as part of your negotiation if you're working with a buyer? How do you position lending to help your buyer win?
When I'm working with a buyer, I view the process as a fully integrated process or an end-to-end solution. So I'm presenting the seller with a solution to their problem. They're trying to sell their home, and we're the best option. We're going to use a local lender that has a history of closing loans with a buyer that's pre-qualified, already run credit, all the things that you would do professionally. Here's the title company that we're going to use. Here's the home inspector we're going to use. Here's my track record. I want that seller to feel like, wow, they've got all their bases covered.
Yeah. I mean, and I try to kind of drive that home. And, I often have clients ask me, what's the value in using you over, some national company that from out of town. And I try to let them know that when you're submitting an offer, everything as part of your offer is being evaluated, not just the price. I mean, the price is probably most important. What's the seller getting bottom line? But if there's multiple offers and you're close and you're using, a lending company they're not as comfortable with, or, maybe we're able to get something where we have what we call our power bid pre-approval, which means it's already gone through underwriting.
Right.
Little things like that can separate it, or speed of closing. Oftentimes we do a lot of quick close because, it's tough in this market still to make a contingent offer. So the seller of the home probably already has bought another house, and they may be paying 2 mortgages. So oftentimes we kind of talk about the idea of, hey, if we can get them to stop paying 2 mortgages, they may consider your offer over another offer that's similar that might need a longer time frame for closing.
There's only one thing more important than the offer price: ability to close.
Right.
And everyone seems to forget that in the negotiation because they're so fixated on the price as opposed to the terms and the quality of the representatives that are coming to the table to work toward getting the deal to closing. When you think about a closing, you've got 5 or 6 people pushing the ball forward. And if any one of those are a weak link in the process, there's going to be a problem. And you're never going to get to this fantasy offer price that was presented by an incompetent agent that hadn't built a successful team to get their client to the finish line. So let's focus on closing and the probability of closing. Right now in the market, we're seeing 1 in 5 deals not go to closing and get canceled. It's damaging to a seller to put their property back on the market.
That's 20% of every contract. What is the impetus of why is that for the most part happening? What are we seeing that's getting those contracts canceled?
Usually it happens at inspection process. And I think right now what we're seeing in this market, the market's very bifurcated based on condition of the property. And you need to understand a little bit about our area. So Anne Arundel County was generally established late 60s, 70s. So we're 50 years old at this point. We have 50-year-old houses. And a lot of those houses haven't been updated. And they get in there for the inspection. They find out there's a couple things wrong, and the buyer already feels like they're overpaying. It gets really hot really fast versus a home that has been updated is in perfect condition. So we're seeing that separation, that widening in the market where homes that aren't in really great condition are losing value and homes that are in great condition are really gaining value.
Yeah, I think it's, and maybe that gets back to the idea of the more balanced market. When it was that extreme seller's market, that stuff didn't matter because you weren't probably getting a home inspection.
Right.
And, those that say, you know what, I'm ready to buy, but I just don't like the mortgage rates. They're just too high right now. I'm going to wait for rates to drop. You may be setting yourself up to start making offers in a seller's market, and the things that you might be able to get fixed. Or, because, we for the most part, we want the deals to go through. If they don't, they don't. But you can negotiate to have the seller maybe help with some of those home inspection items. The fear is that if you wait where rates are lower, that there's going to be more competition and you probably won't get that. And you'll end up maybe even paying a higher price for the house to begin with.
No doubt.
I always like to ask about true life stories of things that have happened or that are going on. So why don't you talk about a recent deal that you've been in where negotiation truly made the difference?
Okay. I have a buyer from California that just looked at a property, fell in love. It's a waterfront property, and they were priced probably 20% too high, which is not unusual. Waterfront sellers typically think their property is the best property to ever hit the market. And listing agents are happy to go along with that and take the listing because they know that it'll get shown. It's a finite product, waterfront. Yeah. We made an offer that was $500,000 less than the list price, which is a gulp for any seller. Yeah. It could be perceived as an insult. So to manage that landing, we prepared a very comprehensive CMA or a market analysis and explained how we're seeing this property, the things that we really loved about the property or the things that my buyer loved about the property, the comparables that we use, and some of the restrictions in the market right now on price. Like, we're just not seeing a lot above this type of number. And a couple of things that they're going to have to take care of. The seller received it extremely well. Okay. And all we wanted was to get a conversation going and receive a counter. We did. We were able to negotiate, and we got it for 15% off of the list price, which I think most of the marketplace would have thought, that's not even worth offering. So if it's professionally managed, and if you can have almost a direct conversation with the seller via a really strong cover letter, you can still win.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you run the risk, as always on those lowball offers, is it offending the seller, and you're managing it up front. That exact same offer could have never happened maybe if you didn't set it up, and they could have been offended and not responded. You often get that. And they don't even come back with a counter offer because they're so offended by but
well, the buyer's attitude. Why? Yeah, the buyer's attitude was maybe we just wait for 6 months until they cut the price. And I said, let's just have the conversation now. Yeah, let's have the conversation now.
All right. Well, we're gonna. Every podcast I feel like has a rapid fire section that we come in, and so we are the Hangin with Gannon podcast is like
lightning round.
Yeah, the lightning round. But now you're officially gonna get. We've named it. It's the Gannon Gauntlet.
Oh, I'm scared.
Yeah, you bet. And I don't, when I came up with it, it was late at night. Now I'm kind of maybe thinking maybe we may have to rename it later. Yeah. But you're going to be.
I'm ready for the gauntlet.
You're the first in the Gannon Gauntlet. All right. So number one, what's the most unique or surprising feature you've ever seen in an Anne Arundel County home you've toured?
Nude paintings of one of the homeowners. So I've seen it a couple times. And it never ceases to amaze me that they don't think to take it down before I get there or before showings. I understand in marriages it could be a gift, whatever.
So you're not saying there was just a artwork that had someone nude. It was actually the homeowner in there. Okay.
Yeah.
But
it's always shocking.
Keep that in a different room or something that you're not going to see.
Right.
Wow. All right. This is an important Maryland question for you here. Old Bay on your crabs or Old Bay on everything?
Old Bay on crabs and scrambled eggs for me.
Scrambled eggs?
Yeah,
Okay.
They're amazing.
Yeah,
It's great.
It's funny that when I ask this question to everybody, there's always this one thing a food I've never imagined with it, and now the next breakfast I'm having, I'm going to try it for sure. All right, this is another real estate question. What's your favorite hidden gem neighborhood in Anne Arundel County that most people don't know about?
I would say Shady Side or Deal, South County. Mm-hmm. You have some amazing neighborhoods down there and amazing waterfront opportunities if you're seeking that. And there's just a good vibe down there. Yeah. There's a chill, low-key country, really sort of like the way that Chesapeake was meant to be lived.
Yeah.
I love it down there. It is an absolute best kept secret.
Yeah. Well, my wife Denise and I love Deal, and we at least once a summer we'll take the Jeep, take the top down a nice day, and drive down there. And yeah, it's just a different vibe. It's waterfront. There's that they have that boathouse kind of like outdoor bar. They got music. It's just a really cool place, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think in Maryland we're also so blessed that we've got the water, we've got the mountains, and they're also close. They're all 2 hours away from Anne Arundel County. When the Orsos are doing a family vacation or a family weekend getaway, are we going to the mountains? Or are we going to the beach?
Our car only goes east. We are going east, man. Yeah. We're going straight to the beach.
Yeah.
So I have 3 children, and they all love being at the beach.
Yeah. Well, you know that when we were talking about this, when we were scheduling this thing, I was down in it was Delaware Beach, but Bethany Beach, and we love it there, and we spend a lot of time, and we're trying to get you guys down there as well. And sounds like you're looking at that. What about Maryland? Is there a favorite Maryland event or festival or anything like that you guys get involved with, or you like going to?
I have to say the Powerboat Show, the Annapolis Powerboat Show. Fall is the best. September and October are the best months in Maryland, period.
Right.
Great time for boating. Downtown Annapolis comes alive. We prefer the Powerboat Show. It's a big party.
Yeah.
Friday is the day for locals when we go down with a lot of friends. So my vote on that question would have to be the Powerboat Show in October in Annapolis.
Yeah. I'll be I'm attending the Sailboat Show on Friday.
Fun.
Yeah. Like just you know, I don't have a boat. I'm a guy who rides on boats, but I like to look at big boats.
Best friends are the ones with boats.
Yeah, exactly. Those are it. Okay, which Maryland-born celebrity would you love to have as your neighbor?
I have to say Michael Phelps. I mean, he's the man, and I would just hope that he invites me to work out with him sometime, and maybe I could get on a workout regimen to get ripped like that guy.
Well, David, when I was researching this question, there was a name that popped up that I didn't realize, maybe people don't know, or maybe I just didn't know, is David Hasselhoff.
He's from Maryland?
He's from Maryland.
I didn't know that.
So I have to, if I was to answer the question, I would select the Hoff. And the reason that I would want to do that is so I could maybe drive Kit around,
the Kit car around,
Night Rider. Yeah, I mean, I already do run in my red bathing suit down the beach a lot.
I'm sure that's
slow motion, right?
Popular.
All right, and then last one we'll hit you with is describe your dream Maryland home in 3 words:
private, waterfront, and sunsets.
Love it. Love it. You finished the Gannon gauntlet.
I made it
unscathed.
I'm sweating, but it was worth it.
All right, we're gonna wrap up here. I just want you to tell our listeners a little bit. How can they get your book, and how can they reach you if they are thinking about buying, selling, or just want any sort of real estate advice?
Obviously, you can find me online, davidorso.com. My personal cell number is on there. Text me, call me. Come by the office. I have 2 offices. The one that I'm at most frequently is in Smyrna Park. We also have an Annapolis office. I'm around. I love what I do. I'm always in town. I'm always networking. I'm always out there. Happy to show houses. Happy to talk to you about the value of your home. So reach out. I'd love to make a new friend. Or if you're somebody I know, give me a call.
I love it. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. This has been great. The book's awesome. I love working with you on deals. It's always professional. I know if we're involved together, it's going to go smoothly. And if there's something that comes up, you're the man to take care of getting it back on path.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, no problem. We're going to end with one last question for you, for the listeners. If you could tell every Anne Arundel County home buyer one thing before they start their home buying journey, what would that be?
Easy. Call Pat. You've got to get pre-qualified. You have to know what you're qualified to purchase. Everything follows the answer. Right. So if you're qualified for 500, that's going to direct you to the neighborhood. You also may find out that there's strategic ways to be qualified for 600. You need to know what you're dealing with. You're getting in a relationship with a banker. You're not buying a house. You're buying a payment, right? And what is the best way to manage that? So manage that relationship first and foremost. Period. End of story. There really isn't a second number two behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always what I tell them. I'm like, you got to understand what's payments like. Well, how much money do I need before you get out there and see any homes?
Yep. Down payment and payment. That's it.
Yep. Love it. Well, we just ended here the third episode of the Hangin with Gannon podcast with our guest, David Orso. We'll be back again with episode 4 soon. And as always, thanks for hanging with Gannon.